particularly you want to talk about, none of those prove the stars are billions of light years away. I happen to believe they are. Don't say that I don't believe this universe is as big as it probably is, probably much bigger than we can comprehend. But instead of saying that proves evolution, I say, wow, that proves we got a big God and he's worthy of worship.
Well, Hovind arguing from personal incredulity doesn't mean that astronomers don't have a pretty good idea of how far away stars are. He's talking about the limits of parallax, and yes, for Earth-based observations, about 300 light years. Technology, the same thing that's giving you your computer there. We have 1,500 light years possible from Hipparcos, and up to, it's about 10,000 right now, 15,000 light years with the VLBA system. There are other ways of measuring distances to the stars as well, but I wonder why we're stuck back in the 1800s.
For what? Question. Question. You also, it appears to me, are assuming the speed of light has always been consistent, or that the speed of light even now travels at the same speed in all parts of space, which we have quasars putting out things that are about 10 times faster than the speed of light. So I would get into that if you'd like. That's a little more. Okay. I would like to discuss with you a little bit about the origin of life again, if you would. Being a, what was your title? A PhD in organic chemistry. Can you explain how amino acids formed into proteins? The simplest protein that we see is 70 to 100 of these amino acids. They all have to be in precise order. And what we saw from Miller and Urey's experiment was half of his amino acids were right-handed, half were left-handed. If you're going to drop letters of the alphabet on the floor and you've got to get 70 of them in order and all right-handed or all left-handed, how's that going to happen? What's the probability against that out of the 20 amino acids that we have? Well, it's not on my list. Is that going to be a taboo question? Okay. I want to know about how life, how you go from amino acids formed in the laboratory to even a simple protein. How did this happen?
55 please. You open up a can of primordial soup, I guess. What you really do, and if you could go to the next slide, he wants to know how amino acids polymerize. And like I said, this is kind of a problem because the amino acids right here are not terribly reactive. They don't polymerize in water. So yes, you do have a kind of a problem. However, you're proposing that there were amino acids present on the early Earth. It's much more likely with volcanoes that there were thioesters present on the early Earth instead. These polymerize in water. You also have the possibility that metals can do the polymerizing, and, which I didn't get much of a chance to get to, this low expectations. I don't really care if I have an average size protein today that's 70 amino acids. What if the proteins and the conserved reactive sites of proteins are usually quite small, 20 or 30 amino acids? And you don't have to have a particular sequence. If you look at your insulin, cow insulin, bat insulin, the sequences aren't the same. There are a variety of amino acid sequences that will get you the same type of catalysis. So this is another straw man argument. You can have a smaller protein do a function. You can have the amino acids coming together very easily under conditions that were present on the early Earth. So what's the big deal?
It'd be interesting to replay the tape. I forgot to make a quick count of how many times you said could have or might have.
That's what science is.
Well, that sounds to me like your religion. You believe it might have happened, it could have happened. There's no scientific evidence that it did happen. What Miller and these guys were able to do, they were able to make a few amino acids. What they don't tell you in the textbooks, which they ought to tell you, are the problems with this experiment. What he actually made was 85% tar, 13% carboxylic acid, both of which are destructive to life. He made 2% amino acids. Out of the 2% that he made mostly just 2 amino acids, and there are 20 required for life. And the amino acids that he made bond much quicker with tar and carboxylic acid than they do with each other. They don't tell you about that, and I think they ought to tell kids this stuff in school. What they don't tell you is that amino acids are kind of like letters of the alphabet, which make words, which make paragraphs, which make books. To make a few letters of the alphabet is a far cry from making a book by random chance from an explosion in a print shop. Half what he made were left-handed, half were right-handed. Smallest proteins do have 70 to 100. You said, well, you have low expectations. Maybe it was only 20. That's your religion. The smallest one today is 70 to 100. Don't tell me you might be by with 20.
In your section on In the Beginning, you state that the Bible verses all tell when the beginning was. I was unable to find any of them that do. Which of these verses is actually supposed to, as you say, tell when the beginning was?
Jesus said in Matthew 19:4 and in Mark 10:6, He which made them at the beginning made them male and female. So it appears to me from that verse that Jesus is saying when God created them male and female, that's when the beginning was. So that's pretty clear from those verses. The Bible talks about Satan was a liar from the beginning. And if you read the book of Genesis, you can see when Satan lied. It was after Adam was created. So I think the creation week, as spelled out in the Bible, was the beginning. Jesus said, all the blood of righteous Abel, from the blood of righteous Abel to the blood of Zacharias the prophet shall be required of this generation, indicating Abel was the first one killed, which is right what the Bible says. And yet the Bible says in Romans 5 and in 1 Corinthians 15, there was no death until Adam sinned. And so if the first death was the death of Abel, which is what the Bible teaches, as far as the first human death, then that was the beginning. So I think an honest, open-minded reading of those verses will indicate the Bible does teach the beginning was about 6,000 years ago, just from adding